Taylor is a part of the Oregon Remembrance Project.
And we're here with Renee Browse.
And we are with Eddie Carrillo.
Ben Bowman is the House Majority Leader for the state of Oregon.
So we are here with Michael Austin. Michael Austin is with Just Compassion. This morning with our special guest, Aaron Earlywine. We are talking this morning about immigration.
You know, I think to do this work, you have to have what I call unrelenting hope. And for me, part of that unrelenting hope is this belief that no matter where you go, you can find enough people who are willing to choose justice if given the opportunity.
And this is we end up dehumanizing people.
There is no greater determination of the value of life than the lives we are willing to take.
She said, I know what it's like to be hated. I know what it's like to be looked down upon because of who you are. And so I am here to protect you and to help give you support to know that you are not hated by everyone.
Each of you are here, and this is live broadcasted again. So if you do have a question, remember it's informal. So we're not about formality here. So make sure that you just raise your hand and then we'll repeat the question into the microphone. A couple of housekeeping issues is you do have paper in front of you, and on the back side of one of those sheets is blank. If you would like to take notes, you're welcome to do so on the back of that sheet, or you can on your phone or whatever device that you have in front of you. Joining me this morning is Dr. Keelan LaFaro and Dr. Bethany Flug from George Fox University. So let's welcome them this morning. They are helping us as a community work through what's called the Community Resilience Model. The Community Resilience Model is a developed theory and model of building resilience, but also to handle better our dysregulation into regulation. And so we are excited that they're here. An acronym or a shortcut slang word for a Community Resilience Model is CRIM. So if you hear the word CRIM, or if you hear that sound, CRIM, that is what they're referring to, or TRIM, Trauma Resilience Model. If you hear that, it has to do with what they're talking about in the title of this. A couple of resources that I want to point your attention to. This book is available. We have 3 copies left of this book. Those of you who purchased this, I hope that you have already gotten into it. It's an excellent read. This book is available over there, 3 more copies. If you have $20, give it to us. If you don't, just take it. I don't care. Make sure that you get this in your hands. I want you to have this if you want. You can order this also from the Sherwood Bookstore. They have this available as well if you want to order it through the Sherwood Bookstore here locally. There is a QR code that's going to come up on the screen. This QR code has to do with the resources that are on your table and also the slideshow that's going to be shown today. This Community Resilience Model, CRIM, C-R-M, you'll see this first sheet. That is kind of the summary of what they're talking about in general. Then there's the Help Now skills. This is the top 10 skills for CRIM, and so this is also available backside for your note-taking. Isn't that convenient? And then also the slideshow is available in PDF form only. And so if you want the slides, then you can have that QR code up there. You can take a picture of that for later, or you can just ask us for it if you don't have your device today. That is all the announcements that I have. I really hope that you enjoy this session. It's going to be up to 90 minutes, and so we have a lot of work to do today. And so let's again welcome Dr. Bethany Flug and Dr. Keelan LaFaro this morning.
Thank you, friends. All right, we're going to do kind of an awkward shuffle so I can see the slides and kind of have my own bearings. Actually, I realized, how's that going to work real quick? Should I pull up my own slides? Would that be better? Yeah, to have the slides. I just realized if the slides can be projected here. Thanks, everyone, for quick housekeeping. Okay, we will figure that out in a moment then. All right, thank you. Fun logistics. Well, thank you, everyone, for being here today. And so one thing that we want to talk about when it comes to the community resiliency model as well, this is Keelan and Beth. Kevin just did a great introduction. Oh, perfect. Yeah, thank you. Is that it was developed by Elaine Miller-Karas, and so she is the one who also wrote the book with a couple of other people from the organization. And so it's just, oh, hey, Kevin. Okay, awesome. And we do want to acknowledge that where we are today in Sherwood was home at one point to the Falati people, which is a Kalapuyan tribe. And so this is the land that we are on, and want to give that acknowledgement for our time today. So, yeah, so again, thank you, Kevin, for the great introduction. A couple logistics as well. It is 90 minutes. Please let us know if you need anything. And there will be some opportunities for participation. We will be inviting you to participate. And so participation is invitational. So please don't feel like you have to. It is an invitation. And then a couple more things. Thank you for having the QR code to make things accessible for people online, as well as here. If you would like more information as well, please let Keelan and I know, and we can give you more resources. If you do become activated, we're hopeful and hoping that we can also get to some of the skills maybe before that can happen. But if you do, please just take a moment for yourself. How the presentation is going to go is I'm going to talk for a little bit, and then Keelan's going to talk, and we'll go back and forth. So it might also be an opportunity for one of us to step outside with you and to support. CRIM is not therapy, but learning CRIM skills is a choice, and it's also something that can be a bridge. That's kind of what they talk about, is CRIM can be a bridge to therapy, and that as you're waiting to get therapy, as you're waiting to have even a next counseling appointment, you can utilize the skills just to support your nervous system, right? It is a it's based on sensations, as we're going to get into, and so there we go. The Resiliency and Trauma-Informed Model, it does have the core values, Trauma Resource Institute, of being service-oriented, justice-focused. It is about dignity, respect, and the worth of every person. It is about family. It is about community. This is always done in community. Usually it starts with the leaders, and you train local leaders, and then you train those leaders to train others. And so it is never done in isolation. Last week we had the opportunity to dig into this a little more, but what I would like us to do, an invitation, would be to think about, maybe write down somewhere, the answers to these questions again. And so if you had the opportunity last week, maybe you think of something different, maybe not, and that's okay. But what or who uplifts you? What or who gives you strength? What or who helps you get through hard times? You just take a moment to write down an answer. And if you happen to watch last week, I know we spent some time digging into that, but we're going to have a moment later that you come back to those. So thank you for taking a moment just to think about what or who uplifts you, what or who gives you strength, and what or who helps you get through hard times. So we'll come back to that later. Awesome. The Community Resiliency Model is a set of 6 wellness skills which can be used which we love, across lifespans, across cultures, across faiths, and with diverse people with different abilities. And so one thing we love, again, is it is a very inclusive model in and of itself, and because we all have nervous systems. So we're going to get into that in a moment. And so since we all have nervous systems, then we have definitely that central piece that is a commonality. All right. Oh, sorry, table. Last week, we also had the opportunity to jump into a definition of resilience. So I'd like to take a moment again to invite you to how would you define resilience? I know we have this up here, and I'll explain in a moment, but take a moment just to think. You can write down, what is your definition of resilience? And I'd like to invite an invitation. Would anyone like to share their definition of resilience with the whole group? Yeah, Rob.
It really makes me think it is important to keep going no matter what. However, you also need to allow rest and self-compassion.
Yeah, keep going no matter what and allow for rest and self-compassion. Thank you, Rob. Yeah, would anyone else like to share? Yeah, Amanda. Yeah, the state of being level and being able to access your whole brain in the midst of struggle. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Oh, Kevin? Mm. Yeah, so seeing the horizon, knowing that it can be better, being able to see the situation you're in, but also know that it can get to a better place. Thank you. All right, well, last week, something we talked about, thank you everyone for just participating. I love hearing everyone's definitions of resilience, right? Because we all have very personal and meaningful definitions of resilience. Last week, we talked about two definitions. One was from Bethel, who talked about staying calm when faced with difficulty, with life's difficulties, right? And the other one was from Davidson, which through his research had determined it was the ability to come back to the equilibrium of your nervous system. And so CRIM, as you'll see, has a very broad but very definitive as well definition, and focusing as well, acknowledging individual and collective suffering. That is a part of resilience. Having compassion and empathy, being solution focused, being focusing on individual and collective strengths, embodying well-being, as well as having optimism, hope, and flexibility. And so, as Kevin had said so beautifully last week, right, resilience isn't just, having, being positive to be positive and not think about any of the hard stuff, right? Resilience is being able to work through the hard stuff, and whether it's staying calm, right, staying within yourself, having hope, perseverance. And so it's not just shoving things, compartmentalizing, right? That's not resilience. And so, and acknowledging the suffering that's also going on and getting through. One thing we love about CRIM is that I love this perspective shift. I'm sure I'll mention, as a teacher, I love that when we consider and think about where we once were, even as a society, right? There's kind of some assumptions I'm going to talk about. So it kind of used to be, I don't know if this happened to you all, maybe even in school, that the assumption was that people are bad, right? And so if you do something bad, you need to be punished. Right? Oh, you did something bad, you need to be punished. That's the conventional understanding. Again, I don't know if you ever got in trouble in school, but I did. And then the assumption and the place of the question of even the heart was, gosh, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with this kid? But we've also begun to move, which I've loved in this shift to trauma-informed, is to this awareness that people are suffering, right? There's more going on in someone's life. And that we just need to learn how trauma impacts children and adults. And not just trauma, but also how stress and high levels of stress. And then the question becomes, what happened to you? So you're able to look at people with compassion and empathy and curiosity instead of, gosh, what's wrong with you? Then the next, I also then love, is just moving into a state of action, which is the resiliency informed model. And last week we were able to talk about this. And again, if you're able to listen to Kevin's story from last week, he did a beautiful job of really taking these ideas and showing action through resiliency. But really the heart of the question is talking about what's right about you, right? And so when you blend these things together, you have this trauma and resiliency informed model that assumes people can grow and change, right? We are not stuck. We are not defined by our adversity, that there's hope, right? We can learn to read our own nervous system, right? And to build resiliency. We also talked about last week, Davison's work was talking about how well-being is a skill, and that one of those skills is in resilience and being able to come back to your baseline of your nervous system. And so really thinking, considering how people can learn that empathetic listening to another's trauma leads to a balanced nervous system. And so skills, we're going to talk about the skills today for how to do this. Which moves us into part 1. Oh, this is Keelan.
Hi, everyone. I'm Keelan. Can you hear me okay? All right. Thanks for having me here to talk with you about the Community Resiliency Model, CRIM. I just love your definitions of resilience. In those, I really heard compassion, worth. I heard what Kevin was talking with us about last week about resilience being biological. In your definition, I heard that, Amanda. It being spiritual, it being relational, and that perspective shift that Bethany just walked us through is really what I think this model is all about. It's about giving us hope, like you spoke to, I think, in the Horizon definition of resilience, that this is about hope. It's about hope for ourselves, it's about hope for others, and learning to really dig into our worth and our dignity. So one of the key concepts, the first key concept of the Community Resiliency Model is this idea of the resilient zone. Is that better? Or the okay zone. So the resilient zone you have in front of you, thanks Beth for reminding us that. The resilient zone is both thought of as biological and behavioral. So the resilient zone is our okay zone. This is not to be confused with our happy zone. I think sometimes people confuse our resilient zone with our happy zone, and that we should just be happy or feel those feelings, right? But the resilient zone is really where we are level. We are level in the face of struggle. We can find compassion for ourselves in the face of struggle. We can see the hope on the horizon in the face of struggle. And the resilient zone is where we can do those things. It's where we are okay. We can handle what's coming at us in life and still be okay. So biologically, which we're going to talk about a little bit more later, but this means that our nervous system is in balance. We don't have too much gas pedal from our sympathetic nervous system, and we don't have too much brake from our parasympathetic. We are just level, we are balanced. Our nervous system is balanced. And behaviorally, this means that we can feel all of the feelings and stay balanced. So we can feel sadness and still be in our okay zone. We can feel anger and still be in our okay zone. We can feel happiness, we can feel excitement, we can feel all of those feelings, but those feelings don't overwhelm us and cause us to have a response that isn't from our best self. So I think of the emojis with sadness, for example, like the sadness emoji that has one tear, might be that I'm feeling sadness, but I'm still in my zone. I'm still okay. I can still respond from my best self. But the sadness emoji where the tears are just flowing might mean that that sadness is taking over and I'm not balanced anymore. So that happens to all of us, and that's when we might get bumped out of our zone. So if you want to bring us to the next one, I think. Yeah, perfect, thanks. So when we have traumatic or stressful experiences, or traumatic or stressful reminders of experiences, because we won't get into this today, but memory can really trigger these things for us, right? So the experiences in the moment and or reminders of those moments can bump us out of our zone. And this happens to all of us because all of us have a nervous system. So one of the things that I love about CRIM is, as Bethany talked about, it's very universal because we all have a nervous system. This is biological. And it's also very personal. I know Bethany talked about this with y'all last week, that our perceptions of what might bump us out of our zone are very personal and individual. So this model is both universal and it's individual. And so when we are bumped, these words, the words in the red box, are kind of indicators that something might be going on biologically with us. And we're experiencing those things behaviorally. So indicators that we might be being bumped into our high zone might be that we might be feeling edgy, irritable. We might have angry outbursts that are hard for us to even explain. We might have increase in pain. That is an indication to us that we have too much gas pedal biologically going on. We're having a stress response. Our sympathetic nervous system is taking over. When we get bumped into our low zone, sorry, do you mind going back? That's good. When we get bumped into our low zone, that means our parasympathetic is taking over, and we have too much brake pedal. So behaviorally, we might experience this as isolation, exhaustion, fatigue, even depression, extreme sadness, numbness. And we can get stuck in these zones. We can be bumped out of them temporarily, and we can also get stuck in them. But where the hope is that in that resilient zone, we can also have indicators of when we're in our resilient zone, when we're in our okay zone. So I'm going to invite you to do a little reflection here, to think about 2 words that would describe you as an indicator that you're in your resilient zone. You're in your okay zone. You're able to handle what's happening in life and respond as your best self. So I'll give you an example. Mine are that I feel curious and I feel compassionate when I'm in my resilient zone. So just invitation to think of a couple of words that describe you in your resilient zone. And if you're willing to share with the people at your table, I invite you to share your words that describe you and your resilient zone. right, and as you're ready, we'll come back in 1 minute. No, that's okay. I forgot to tell times. Thanks for engaging in those connections. Sorry to interrupt. As Bethany said, this model is really about doing this work in community, even though these are pretty individual skills. So thanks for taking the time to talk about that. Is there anybody who's willing to share either your 1 or 2 words or a couple of words you heard at your table that are indicators of being in a resilient zone? Yeah.
So I came up with the phrase creatively overcome.
Oh, I love that.
Which means that when I'm in a creative zone, artist, whatever, it allows me to process and overcome certain things that I wouldn't by not being creative.
Creatively overcoming. Thank you. That's an excellent description. Yeah.
We had words like focused, joyful, loving.
Focused, joyful, loving. Excellent. Anyone else? Yeah. Open and flexible and intuitive, absolutely. So I just invite you to keep those words in mind as we move through the rest of this presentation, that those are indicators that you're in your resilient zone. So that means your nervous system is balanced. All right, so the next slide is helping us to think about one of the big ideas of this model with our resilient zone, is that our resilient zone can change. It can be narrow at certain times. It can change throughout the day. It can change throughout the week. Bethany and I always joke about how our resilient zone is definitely more narrow before we have coffee. I don't know if that's real for any of the rest of you, but and then so the hope here is that by learning and practicing skills, we can actually change our wiring in our brain to have over time a wider resilient zone and be able to stay in that resilient zone more easily and longer. And so the other reason why this matters, if you want to go to the next slide, is that our resilient zones, there's a really amazing growing area of neuroscience research that's learning about these ideas of mirror neurons. So I won't get too much into the detail of this, but mirror neurons were first kind of discovered in our motor parts of our brain, but they've actually been discovered more in sensory receptive parts of our brain too, which is leading scientists to think that our regulation of our nervous systems impacts the regulation of the nervous systems around us. And so a regulated nervous system can help regulate another nervous system, which is really exciting and hopeful. And that's where a big part of this community idea is. So if you see someone smile, for example, you might smile in response, both because you're having a motor mirror neuron experience, but also a sensory perception mirror neuron experience of receiving that person's wellness, their own well-being. And so with mirror neurons, a person in their zone of well-being, right, can help support the people around them to be in their own zones of well-being as well. So if you want to take a minute to just, next slide, identify where you are right now. So maybe you're in your resilient zone, maybe you're bumped a little high, maybe you're bumped a little low, maybe you're on the edge. It's just a part of this model is learning to read ourselves. So if you want to just identify, where are you? You don't have to share. This is personal reflection. Where are you in your zone right now, this morning?
All right, if I could have your attention back up here. Thank you, friends, for taking a moment to identify where you are in your resilient zone. It's something that once Keelan and I teach our teacher candidates these skills, I know I personally love to have as an activity when people come into the classroom, because I teach in person. I have drawn the resilient zone up on the board, and I have my students, because they already created like magnets of themselves. Yeah, we're grad students, but we have fun. And so they identify where they're at, right, in their resilient zone. And then I, give an invitation to practice a skill to support themselves and their well-being. And sometimes I choose to like a skill, and we all go through it together. But I also wanted to state, we just learned this last week about a recent study that was done on teachers, and it was just one school, I believe, but on teachers and their cortisol levels, and how when teachers had higher cortisol levels, their students had higher cortisol levels. Like there was a direct correlation. It didn't matter what was going on in the kids' lives at home. It could be anything. Like, and so when we heard this today, I'm like, what? That is insane. So as we continue like the growing body of research on mirror neurons, right? And moving into the sensory part of our brain, right? We impact the people like we're around. We impact, and so I'm just super excited for this research that's coming out. And again, kind of just showing this need to learn skills to support ourselves, right? Yeah. Yeah, and so calm people, right? And that's from Bruce Perry's neurosequential model of education and therapy. And so it's calm bodies. It's phenomenal. I'm so excited for this research. And so we're going to be moving in, excuse me, that was just weird, to the skills. I feel like I should also share. Most of you know I did a run yesterday, and so if you see me like fidgeting and moving, I can tell like my nervous system is a little out of whack. It's trying to figure itself out, and so I'm sorry if I start fidgeting a lot, and I'm working on myself at the moment. And so we're moving into the skills. Really excited to teach these to you all. And so one thing that CRIM does is, as we think about the skills, there are 6 skills. And as we look at your hand, right, you could think of it in your hand, right? But in the center is tracking, because the center, like the main focus of CRIM, right, that makes it different than mindfulness practices, is tracking your nervous system. Learning your nervous system, tracking your nervous system. And so the center of this is tracking, and then these are the other skills. There's also a free iChill app that can also walk you through the skills. At any point in time, we're going to talk about it again at the very end. But when you think about CRIM, just think about tracking is central to what we do, and we're going to be learning about that first. If we can move to the next slide. Again here, just another visual to show. The 6 skills are tracking, resourcing, grounding, help now, shift and stay, and gesturing. And we're going to be getting to 4 of those just because of our time today. When it comes to this model, again, as we focus on tracking, there are other models that can and do support our bodies and our nervous system. The difference with the community resiliency model, right, and the work around it with tracking, is that it's going to be focusing on sensation, because sensation is what helps soothe our amygdala and tells you, hey, you're okay, right? And so we can soothe our amygdala through sensation. But there are other ways, right, that you can also support your well-being, ways through thinking and ways through feeling. But today we're going to be talking about sensing. But sensation is also a different language. And so we're going to be getting into that too in a moment. And so we're going to move into the skills. So the first one is tracking, and this is reading sensations in your body. So this is really learning your nervous system, learning how your body, right, learning the cues of your body. And we can do that, which is also super exciting. So tracking is noticing or paying attention to what is happening inside your body at the present moment, right? And then, while you're noticing in your body, it is also determining if the sensation is pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. It is very, very important for the skills of tracking to stay with the sensations that are pleasant and neutral, because this is also how we can help rewire our brain, is by staying in those pleasant and neutral sensations. And so some curiosity questions, again, just to yourself when we begin to practice tracking, is what do you notice on the inside? So when you think of, and it's physically your body on the inside, which is then not a feeling, it's a sensation. And we're gonna get into those sensation words. Are the sensations pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral? Keelan talked about this a little bit ago, but what we're also doing, right, is we are tracking our nervous system. And so in our nervous system, in the autonomic nervous system, right, you have the sympathetic nervous system, and that prepares us for action, right? That also is going to let your body know if you need to fight, flight, or freeze. This is really important as well, because it also helps you get moving, right? This is central to our bodies. We need this. But sometimes, right, as we're going to talk about, when it goes into a heightened state or overwhelmed state, that's kind of being bumped out of your zone, right? Bumped high. But then we also have our parasympathetic nervous system, and this prepares us to rest, right? We need this in balance. So as we talk about the gas pedal, sympathetic, parasympathetic is the brake. To be in our resilient zone, we need this to be in balance, right? If you've ever done, like, maybe a run, just gonna throw this out there, and if you've noticed, like maybe as you're exercising, you notice that you just need more water because your mouth is dry, because you're not producing saliva, because you're getting into your sympathetic nervous system, right? But then something once you, sorry, this is good though. This means maybe I'm in my I just had saliva. And so the parasympathetic nervous system, right, prepares you to rest. If you are in your sympathetic, digestion is not happening. Right? I'm going to say that again because it's just so fascinating. Our bodies are so fascinating, right? It is difficult. We can't digest food, right? If we're in our sympathetic state. I mean, we get a little bit, but not a lot, right? So our body needs to be at rest. That's also why I feel like there's so much mindfulness and connection around eating, because you have to be at rest to digest. Yeah, right? And this is also then true, right, in regulation. We have to be in that equilibrium, not too much gas, not too much brake, to be in our resilient zone. You can move to the next slide. Yeah. This is a very cool study that they did where they had people draw on a body image where there was increased sensation and decreased sensation in the body. And it was based on feelings. But one thing we just love to show about this is as you also look at it, right, sensation is a physical experience in the body. And that's what this study is showing, right? So when you have increased sensation and decreased sensation, so asking people to draw on a body where they experience, where's anger? Right, where do they sense anger in their body? Anything stand out to you? Real quick. All you need is love. Bum, 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 bum. Right? Anyone notice Spider-Man? Sorry, I have a 5-year-old. I always say that with shame, because it kind of looks like Spider-Man. But also super fascinating, right? Where people drew an increase and decrease sensations in their body when feeling shame. Right? So sensation is a physical experience in our body. You can move to the next slide. We're not going to get too much into the weeds in this because although brain research is fascinating and the work that they're doing right now is fascinating. And one of the things that Elaine Milikaris talks about is really this tracking of your nervous system is learning a skill of interoception. And so it's called learning the skill of that's the more of the technical terms for it. But I can focus on, like, if I look at the very bottom one. Body awareness can reduce impulsivity and promote emotional regulation and clearer thinking. So as we learn the skills of becoming more aware of our bodies, studies are showing that you can reduce impulsivity and improve emotional regulation. You can move to the next slide, thanks. So we can learn the difference between sensations of distress and sensations of well-being, right? Once we can learn that, we can begin to have a choice. And when we pay attention to what's going on inside and are aware of what's going on inside, we can choose, we can then make a choice. And also know that not always. Our brains have been wired, right? We are biology, right? It's biology, not mental weakness. But one thing we can do is we can notice and choose between a pleasant sensation or neutral sensation and unpleasant, which is important for tracking. One thing, you're going to find this with every of the skills, right? This is a choice, because we also know that some people have experienced things in life that this might actually bring up sensations that are too painful, right? So please, as an invitation to practice the skills, and that if you do notice something, please feel free to take care of yourself right now. If you need to stand up and move around, Take a moment outside, feel the cool air, the rain. I can move to the next one. All right, this is on your table, and I want us just to have this on our table and be aware, because we're going to be talking about sensation language. One thing I really like to focus on personally, as we move from feeling language, as many of us have been taught to do when talking about ourselves, right, and our feelings, we're moving into sensation language. And so it's really thinking about what is physically going on the inside. Personally, for me, I notice very quickly temperature, what's happening with my muscles, what's happening with my breathing, and what's happening with my heart. Those are 4 things that personally I can track pretty quickly at this point and notice what's going on in my body. So these are just learning sensation words, and as we begin to describe what's going on in our bodies using sensation words, I do recommend, because it can be really easy to then go, oh, this is warm. Oh, that's the physical sensation. Or, ooh, my muscles just loosened. That's the physical sensation, right? Or, oh, my breath just got deeper. Or, my heart rate slowed down. So we're going to have an opportunity to practice. You want to move to the next slide? Thanks. How am I going to? I'm going to try yelling. Thanks, I will. Good call. And so it's that moving away from feeling language to what is physically happening in our bodies, right? Is there tightness? Is there looseness? Right? Is there heat? Is there coolness? Did anyone's breath get a little faster, right? Your heart rate got a little faster, maybe. Did your heart rate slow down, right? And so this is the skill of tracking. And so what we're going to do, though, is we're going to use 2 other skills, so all the other skills, to continue to practice tracking. For those online, what we just did is we put our hands together and we rubbed them together really fast. And so as we were doing that, maybe I can, oh, sorry, I keep stepping way up here. Maybe Keelan, would you want to step in just to kind of show what we just did really quick? And so we had people just rub their hands together. And then once they stopped, notice the physical sensations. What did you notice, Keelan?
Warmth and tingling and some muscle tightness. Yep.
Thank you. All right, so that is a skill of tracking. Again, we're gonna continue to go back the whole time, the rest of our training, and talking about these sensation words, because that is how we learn to read our nervous system, is through sensations. All right, that moves us into the second skill of resourcing.
All right, I get to talk to y'all about resourcing. I love this skill. What you might have just experienced is what happens is that our brains have a negativity bias. So we're designed that way. We're supposed to do that. Our amygdala is supposed to signal risk and give us warnings so that we can fight, flight, or freeze if we need to. And so when we are learning the skills of CRIM, we have to intentionally try to seek out sensations of well-being or pleasant sensations because our brains are going to go right to our unpleasant sensations. That's just what's going to happen. And so resourcing is one of my favorite skills to try to do that. And resourcing is basically calling to mind something or someone that makes you feel those things that you feel in your resilient zone. So coming back to your words that were indicators to you that you are in your resilient zone. Love, joy, hope, balance, calm, curious. When we think about resourcing, we can think about anything that might help us bring up those feelings. So a resource can be something or someone. It can be real or imagined. It can be happening in the moment, or it can be a memory. It can be anything that's supportive and anything, again, that really brings you to those feelings of your resilient zone. And helping you to embody a sense of well-being. So what we know about our brains is that what we pay attention to grows. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the research behind neuroplasticity, but we used to think that our brains were set by a certain age. And we know now that our brains can change. And so what we pay attention to, those sensations of well-being, really matter in creating new neural pathways for ourselves. Because we can pay attention to sensations of well-being and build new pathways of well-being in our brains, which I think is really exciting. So the key idea here, though, is that in order to do resourcing through this model, we need to do it in a sensory way. We need to have sensory experiences with it. So when we think about our resources, we want to think about the sensations associated with that, like the smell, the sight, maybe the touch or the taste. So when we expand the sensory experience related to a resource, that helps us to tap into those sensations of well-being. So I'll give you an example. A resource for me was my grandmother and baking cookies with her. And so when I think about that, I think about the smells, I think about the warmth that the oven brought to the room, I think about the sound of the way we would laugh, and I think about the colors in her kitchen. And so when I bring that resource to mind, I tap into all those sensory experiences to bring that resource to mind. So I'm going to invite you to do a little resourcing exercise. If you can go to the next slide, Jake. Yes. Let me make sure this is right. So actually, sorry, one more. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to leave this one up, and I'm going to invite you, give you a couple different options for this, to practice the skill of resourcing. So you likely already thought about something that is a resource for you today in your warm-up questions or our resiliency pause questions. When you answered the question, what or who uplifts you? What or who gives you strength? And what or who helps you get through hard times, you already started to tap into those resources. So what I'm going to invite you to do now is bring those things to mind again and add tracking specifically add tracking when you notice sensations of well-being. So again, I'll give you an example. When I think about my grandmother and baking cookies with her, and the smells, and the temperatures, and the sounds, I have a smile on my face that I can't kind of stop from happening. I feel my shoulders relax, and I feel a really wonderful warmth in my chest. And all of those feel pleasant to me. I'm sure I have some unpleasant sensations going on right now, but I'm not noticing those. I'm tuning into what's pleasant. Actually, my heart rate is decreasing right now, too, as I think about this. Oh, and I just took a deep breath. Wow. So in this model, we don't direct breath. We just, if you do take a deep breath and that feels pleasant, maybe just notice it. So I'm going to invite you, and just individually, and I'll give you a time, just a minute, to call to mind a resource and to track any sensations of well-being or pleasant sensations that might come up for you. And then, if you're willing, to share at your tables about that experience, what you're calling to mind and any of those sensations of well-being. And let's take 5 minutes for this. We're going to come back in 1 minute. 1 minute. All right, if you can find a good pause point for that discussion, we'll come back. Thank you. All right, invitation, anybody willing to share a resource that you thought of, called to mind, and any pleasant or sensations of well-being that you experienced? Yeah.
I noticed as you were speaking, you put your hand to your heart. And I find that if I do that kind of just activates that glow.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Oh, sorry, should I repeat that? Oh, so we heard that. I didn't even notice I was doing that, actually. That's so amazing. So that's what's wonderful about these experiences is you can kind of just soothe yourself without even realizing it, maybe that. So I put my hand to my heart when I was talking about my resource and just really calling that glow, bringing that glow, absolutely. Did you experience that when you were doing your resourcing? Wonderful, yes, thank you. Yeah, did you want to share?
So, what I was saying was, around fall and winter, I can be a real lover of vintage stuff, 30s and 40s. And I was mentioning that when I was a kid, I'd go to my grandparents' and great-grandparents' house, and they had full of that vintage stuff everywhere, and the colors everywhere. And the sensation, the feeling, I was surprised. It was contentment, but also kind of melancholy, because, you know, two of those three people aren't here with us anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a strange kind of combination going on.
Yeah, absolutely. So we heard that this person was bringing up a resource of thinking about vintage and then the people associated with that, and that was bringing up the feelings of contentment, but also melancholy. And that's exactly right. Our resources many of them are complex, including, for example, my kids are very much a resource for me, and sometimes very much not, right? So all of our resources are complex, right? If I'm trying to call to mind the feeling of calm in my resilient zone, right, I might think about something different than if I'm trying to call to mind a feeling of excitement or curiosity. So our resources are complex, all of them. And so thank you for bringing that point up, because that's very true. And also a really important piece of this is how memory is connected to all of this. We have implicit and explicit memories that are stored in various parts of our brains, and oftentimes our resources can kind of open up memory capsules. Hopefully many of them are pleasant, but sometimes we might open up an unpleasant memory capsule, and that brings us into that high or low zone. And so we might need to shift to something different. So thank you for bringing that up. That's a really, really good point. I recently had an experience where I was out walking and I was listening to a song, and I noticed that it kind of opened up a memory capsule for me that was really happy, and I was starting to feel those pleasant sensations of kind of that warmth in my chest and the smile, and but then also it's complex, right? So yes, thank you for sharing that. Anybody else resourcing and yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing that. That's an amazing resource. Again, so many wonderful things in there with the coffee. And did you notice any sensations of well-being, if you don't mind me asking, when you were resourcing in that way? Wonderful. Yes, yes. Yeah, and Beth's gonna jump in. Oh, yes, sorry. So the resourcing with coffee and both just the love of coffee and also the memory of learning to love coffee from your grandfather and feeling of calm and feeling of gratitude associated with that, absolutely. And
I think one of this resourcing practice that you can also do, and Keelan has taught me, I feel like, how to do this so well. And I learned this from the CRIM training, but also from her, and that as you have photos on your phone that you take, if you just take a moment to favorite those photos. So a resourcing activity I love to do with my students is I have them pull up a photo that reminded them, right? That was something that it was a great moment, right? Or someone that gives them strength, right? So you pull up that photo and then you just take a moment and track, right? Track those pleasant sensations. Do you notice a smile? Do you notice warmth in your chest? Do you notice loosening of your muscles, right? And just that one moment can help reset your nervous system. Or even if you're in your nervous system, maybe you're a little high and you notice it kind of bring you back more into the middle, right? And so, but one thing Keelan does, and I love, if I can share, is that as she, favorites those photos, sometimes at night she'll take a moment and go through those, and then just practice the skill. But then also, before you go to bed, you're like solidly in your resilient zone. That's just a practice that I love, and you can use it to, if you notice yourself maybe getting a little lower in your resilient zone, you can also use it to kind of get some energy, right? So sometimes I'll say find a funny photo, right? And again, it's just so much fun to then go and notice all the smiles, the laughter, right? And then what's happening and noticing the pleasant and neutral sensations. So.
Oh yeah, that's such a great example. Yes, and that's one of the things that, oh yeah, Kevin, please.
I just wanted to ask, at some point, we get into the dorsal shutdown zone. And maybe there's just too much stimulus, maybe just too much is going on all at once. So to resource, do you have categories that you can move off of, yes, looking at pictures, but if I'm in the dorsal shutdown mode, pictures beforehand,
Yeah.
or even tracking, feeling my sensations. get up into those higher red zones, just wondering if there's some resourcing, is that the proper word, that we can do to, and especially with our brain function, depending on how developed our executive functions and our frontal lobe is, seems to me, and maybe this is unresearched and just off the top of my head, it seems to me that I would not be able to resource and track as well, depending on how neurodiverse I am, in what category I'm in, if I can say it that way, with all due respect. So,
Yes, absolutely. And we're actually that's a really nice segue because we're going to talk about the stress response because you're absolutely right. Resourcing is really especially a helpful skill when you're either already in your zone to widen your zone. It's probably really best used that way, thinking about trying to create those new neural pathways. And this is the thing about that I love about this model is it's a lot. This skill in particular is one that we can use when we're already in our resilient zone to bring like attention and intention into some of the things we already do. So Bethany gave that example. I already look at pictures of my kids on my phone. So when I add tracking to that, I'm helping to create neural pathways of well-being in my brain. But resourcing might not be and probably isn't that helpful if you are in the red zone. If you are so bumped out of your zone, we're gonna give you another skill for that. And that is specifically the help now skills, because those are really about like your lid is flipped, which we're gonna talk about in just a minute. Your lid is flipped, you don't have access to that prefrontal cortex. You need something totally different. Resourcing probably isn't really gonna help you in that moment. You're absolutely right. So, and that brings us to one of the key concepts here about the use of these skills. It really depends on, which is why we go back to tracking, what's going on with you. So asking that question first, what's happening with me? What's happening? So that we can then say what's right with us. So if you want to go to the next slide, Bethany, I know, talked about this a lot last week, but this model is really about biology, not mental weakness. So we're not saying that we should be able to logic ourselves or think ourselves back to a place of our resilience zone. Like if only I just calm down, I would be able to get back to why can't I just calm down? Right? We know that that doesn't work typically. And so this is really about the fact that we all have common reactions to stressful and traumatic events and stressful and traumatic reminders that affect our mind, our body, and our spirit. And so if you want to go to the next slide, I know Bethany talked about this last week as well. This is universal, but it's so individual to us, right? We all go through things differently. So, yes. How deep is the mud, right? So, how stressful was something is really individual. And this is why we need biology-based interventions, because our responses are different to this. So, we all go through the same stuff differently. And so if you want to move us to the next slide, and that's really where this stress response comes in. So there's a lot of words on here, but basically we all have a biological response to stress, and it happens on a spectrum. And understanding the science behind our reactions can empower us to have skills that can help us when we're in that stress response, or help us even preparing for that stress response. The wellness skills can be the antidote to that. So next slide, please. And I think this one is really important because I think that sometimes wellness skills get a bit of a bad reputation as being kind of soft, right? Like if we just practice wellness more, you know, like there is a certain amount of stress that's positive. We actually need stress. We need just enough stress to have us go into action when we need to get us ready for things that we need to get ready for. But when we're in a positive stress response, our body can return to balance more quickly. When we have tolerable stress, this is when we might have time-limited stress. So we're in that stress response for longer, but we can return to balance with supports and interventions. Toxic stress is when we have this ongoing, relentless stress in our body that over time is really can do a lot of damage. And so one of the things that we really hope about this model is that it can give us skills to help us understand what's going on with our stress response and to choose to practice something, both when we're in our resilient zone and when we're bumped out. So if you want to go to the next one. So toxic stress, and I know y'all talked about this the last couple of weeks, but just this idea that we might have too much too fast, too little for too long, or too much for too long. That can put us into this toxic stress zone. And I know Bethany is going to jump in here because she talked to you last week about PACEs related to this, positive childhood experiences. So go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Keelan. To move to the next slide. Thank you. Yeah, so last week, if you had a chance to listen or were here, we talked about Bethel's work around positive childhood experiences, and what she has discovered and also is continuing to research is that there is a direct correlation between the amount of positive childhood experiences someone has experienced in childhood and their adult mental health and well-being. And something they've noticed, which is love, is that what it also means is even if you've had one of these, right, it can mitigate and impact how your brain is being wired while you are experiencing traumatic and stressful events. So even just one can support your mental health and emotional health. So do you want to move into the next slide? So last week we got a little deeper into these, but I'll read them out loud for you right now. Because I just find these, when I first learned about these, I had so much hope. I had so much hope for our youth, for our kids, for myself, and realizing the things I was fortunate to experience myself growing up. And so here are the 7 that have been identified from her study. Feeling able to talk to your family about feelings, feeling your family stood by you during hard times, feeling safe and protected by an adult in your home, just one. Feeling supported by friends, feeling a sense of belonging in high school, have at least 2 non-parent adults who took a genuine interest in you, and enjoying participation in community traditions. So again, just having one of these, right, is being shown that it can mitigate and impact how trauma is impacting your brain as a youth, right? And so the more of these you had, whether you were experiencing trauma and stressful events in your life, that actually didn't matter. So even if you weren't experiencing traumatic and stressful events as a child, the more of these you had, the better your mental health and emotional health was as an adult. I find so much hope in this. And again, I think I said this last week, as someone who trains teachers, I always love showing this to my students because I'm like, hey, if you're going to teach high school, right, feeling a sense of belonging in high school, you can help impact that for youth. Also, enjoying participation in community traditions, right, as a teacher. Having at least 2 non-parent adults who took a genuine interest in you. Teachers, right? Yes. But then lastly, one of the ones I love, and thinking of, at the state of Oregon, we have transformative social emotional learning skills that are being required for teachers to teach in schools, and it's slowly rolling out. We're figuring it out. But as I think about it, I'm like, oh, as kids learn these skills, how much better their friendships are going to be. Because one of the tenets of SEL is relationship skills, right? And so I'm so excited. Also, social awareness. That's another tenet of SEL. So we can go down that rabbit trail, but that's when I look at this too. I'm like, oh man, feeling supported by friends. Yes, SEL in schools. Okay, we can move on to the next slide. And just, I said this last week too, but a reminder, and one thing that gives me hope with this, is that adversity is not destiny. Right? I loved, Kevin, your definition, right? Looking at the horizon, right? Just because you might be somewhere now, or you were somewhere in the past, doesn't mean that's your future. So, would you move on to the next skill, please? The next skill we're going to be talking about is grounding. Okay, double checking our time. This one is my favorite. You're going to look at this and go, shocking, Beth. Yeah, thanks. Got some chuckles. Because it is about the direct contact of your body or part of your body with something that brings support in the present moment. So it is, I'll say that again, grounding is the direct contact of the body or part of the body with something that provides support in the present moment. And again, when we get to this next slide, you guys are going to laugh at me. But one of the things, actually, you can go back really quick. Thanks. When we practice grounding, what it does is it gives us sense of self in relationship to time and space, and it brings us back to the present moment, right? So we're not thinking about the future, we're not thinking about the past, we are here in the moment. And it brings you into the moment also physically in your body. Now you can do the slide, thank you. And so you can ground in lots of different ways. Walking, paying attention to your feet as it hits the ground, that sensation, that's one way you can practice grounding. You can lay down on a surface or in water. And again, just notice the contact your body is making with a supportive surface. You can stand against a wall, lean up against a wall. You can sit in a chair, sofa, ground, or through a part of your body like your hands and feet. So even as I'm standing here, I can practice grounding and just notice my feet and how it is making contact with the surface. Move to the next one. Again, as you'll notice as we practice the skills, some people might have unpleasant sensations associated with any of those positions. So I highly recommend, please, it is an invitation to practice. You do not have to. Please be kind to yourself as well, and have compassion. Just that as you choose a position, and we do take a moment to practice the skill of grounding, just know that please just make the choice of how you decide to do this. Yeah, Connie.
Is there any research around organic to organic skin ground?
Ooh. I do. Yeah. Also, when we get to some Help Now skills, we'll talk about some Help Now skills you can do with that as well. But yeah, one of the ways you can ground is if you're standing and noticing the desk, or noticing the table. If you're outside, noticing the tree, the human next to you. Yeah.
I've heard for kids that are overstimulated to put your hand on their shoulder more freely. Is that kind of an example of helping someone else ground?
Yeah, with like co-regulation. And so one of the things that I love also with Bruce Perry's work, he does the What Happened to You book, but he has a whole neurosequential model of therapy and education. One of the things he talks about is co-regulation. And so also I would love to see him connect more with mirror neurons. Maybe he will someday. I think, yeah. But yeah, sometimes that co-regulation and supporting someone, noticing the pressure that you're making contact with, that could also, we'll get to Help Now skills, and we'll talk about how that can be a Help Now skill. And so one of the things that's a little different with grounding is that this one does take, like when practicing it, it doesn't have to take a long time, but it can take like 2 minutes compared to something that we'll get to Help Now, that is more quick. And so I'd like to take this moment to invite us to practice. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read from the app, the iChill app, because she just does this so well. But if you decide to listen to it, it is Elaine speaking. And I want to give us an opportunity to practice the skill of grounding. And so I'm going to read from the app and walk you through a grounding exercise. And it's just an invitation. Again, please feel free also to not do it. That's okay. And so, I got to take a deep breath. Okay. Notice my breath. All right. Grounding refers to bringing your attention to your body in the present moment by noticing how your body or part of your body is making contact with the surface. You can ground by sitting, standing, lying down, or finding a position that is simply comfortable for you. Please find a comfortable position. As you find a comfortable position, notice how your body is making contact with the chair, the sofa, the bed, the floor, the wall, or the ground. As you bring your attention to the places of support, notice your breathing, heart rate, and muscle relaxation. Notice especially any places inside that feel more relaxed, more pleasant, or neutral. Take your time. Next, bring attention to your back, lower back, and then your lower body, thighs, legs. If you are sitting or standing, notice how your feet are resting on the floor and how they're making contact with the ground. Bring your attention to the pleasant or neutral sensations within your body. Take your time. It can also be helpful to notice the positioning of your arms and your hands. Just notice them and how they are resting. For some of us, we become aware of our body in the present moment when we become aware of an uncomfortable or even painful sensation. Shift your attention to places that feel better, more pleasant, or neutral. As you do this, notice the change. Take your time. As you bring your attention to neutral or pleasant sensations, it may be helpful also to notice your breathing, heart rate, and muscle relaxation. Bring your attention to the sensations that are more pleasant or neutral. As a way to bring your practice of grounding to a close, slowly scan your body from head to toe. Bring attention to all the places inside that have changed in a more pleasant or neutral way since you started. Take your time. When you are ready, bring your awareness back to the room or space where you are. If you need more time, take all the time you need. I like to then invite us in our table groups. If you feel comfortable sharing the pleasant and neutral sensations you noticed while you're practicing that skill, please take a moment to share with your table. All right. If I could draw our attention back up here. Oliver? Nope. Come here, buddy. All right, friends, our kiddos, if you guys just walked in, would you please find a table? Maybe come sit with your adult. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you, friends. All right. Would anyone like to just do a quick share out? What were some sensations you noticed, some pleasant and neutral sensations, whether it was loosening of muscles, deepness of breath? I heard a lot of deep breaths, which was really cool to notice, and lots of like shoulders loosening. But anyone, the invitation to share out? The pressure and warmth of the back of the chair. Was that a pleasant sensation? Yeah, that was a pleasant sensation. Thank you.
The thing with me is, the more still I try to be, the more anxious I become. So I need to fidget around before I start finally loosening up.
Yeah. So the more still you become, the more you need to fidget. Yeah. Did you notice you were able to do that and find a pleasant sensation?
Yes and no.
Yeah, yes and no. It's very real, very real.
I think kind of the feeling before and after, like kind of the body scan, like at first it might be like I didn't feel relaxed, but then like going back through afterwards and like another body scan, I realized I was much more relaxed.
Yeah, the first body scan, you know, you didn't quite notice where you were, right?
No, I feel like
You.
I noticed more of
Thank you.
like the discomfort perhaps.
Yeah.
one way or another. And then as I kind of sat in that, like it kind of became more comfortable.
Yeah, thank you. So sitting and it became more comfortable. Yeah, all right. Okay. I think we can just keep, want to wrap it up? Okay. One thing that we will do is some transparent facilitation. Would you like us to wrap it up? Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's all good. Well, one thing I will then draw our attention to really quickly is there's another piece of paper at your desk, and it is about help now skills. And so we won't have an opportunity, which I'm very sorry, to practice these skills, but these skills are meant to be ones that are done quickly, right? These can take 10 seconds. And so whether it's those of us, again, as we build this awareness of learning and tracking our nervous system, or those of us who have that awareness of learning and tracking our nervous system, you can practice a help now or reset now skill that can help you quickly get back into your resilient zone. And so these are definitely meant for when, let's say you notice all of a sudden you're overwhelmed. And you can even coach others who don't know the skills to utilize these skills to support their well-being. That's something I have done many times. Sorry, my child's here now. But many times with Oliver, whether it's I have him grab my hands and he squeezes. And then I notice he takes a deep breath, right? Because he really is about that pressure. Or I put his hands under cold water. I'm like, hey, buddy, let's get some cold water in our hands, right? I do it for myself too. But it's something that, again, these sensations, these can be done with more than just what's right here, but these 10 skills, Crim has chosen as like their top 10 skills for the help now skill. And so these are just theirs. It doesn't have to be everybody. Some people are really like color focused or number focused, right? And so counting or looking at different colors, but then noticing and tracking the pleasant and neutral sensations that are happening in your body, right? As you look around, let's say for colors of the rainbow in a space. And so there's lots of different, when it comes to help now, those are those 10 skills in front of you that, again, are meant to be done quickly to help reset your nervous system and get you back in. And so, is there something else? We run out of time.
Thanks
and
for
we want
having
to,
us.
yeah, thank you so much for hanging out with us and doing this. Keelan, did you want to say anything?
Just that the iChill app has all these skills there and really walks you through them. So especially Help Now, actually it's like right in the top corner. So that's a really great resource as well to continue to practice these skills.
And Jake, would you mind going to, there's a slide towards the very end. So Crim as an organization is, if you want to go back a little. Yeah, that one. One thing that's wonderful about Crim is it is all over the world. And so it is mostly, there's a disaster relief model. They go into places around the world where there's natural and man-made disasters, and they go in to support. And so they go in and they teach the leaders, and then leaders go and teach more. So like right now there's a huge presence in Ukraine. There's also yeah, there's just presence all over the world, which I love. But it's also a part of the social, emotional, and ethical learning curriculum that is in 75 countries. And so it's chapter 2 of this social, emotional, and ethical learning curriculum, again, that is being taught around the world and has been adopted by different countries. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you so much, both of you, for being here. Let's give them a round of applause. It's obvious to me that this is an important topic because this crowd stayed motionless for an hour and a half for this and engaged fully. I saw everybody. Nobody actually fell asleep and everyone was wide awake. So what that means is we have to do a part 2, don't we? Yes. Would it be helpful? Okay. So a couple of resources for us. First resource is the TraumaResourceInstitute.com. TraumaResourceInstitute.com is the resource where this TRM, CRM, trauma resilience, community resilience methods come from. And so TraumaResourceInstitute.com is the website that you can look at resources, but also some research that is catered, as I was looking through it, kind of catered to what your interest is. And so if there's like an interesting thought or thing that you have. So for example, Connie said, is there an organic to organic resourcing method? There is. It's called earthing. Earthing is one of the things that we do on a not so common practice because it requires barefoot to earth or bare hand to earth. But it is a practice that we can do. It includes hunting and fishing too, if you're interested in that. So just on a side note, there's research like that within this topic that you can do. Jake, if you would put the QR code once again for us and the online listeners. The QR code is available for these 2 sheets, actually 3 sheets. Also, their slideshow presentation in PDF form is available to you if you want those slides and those topics and those lists that they gave. Also, this book is available to you, Building Resilience to Trauma. If you can afford the $20, great. If you can't, just take it. And if you want a copy and can't afford it yourself, just tell me and we'll buy it for you. So this is an important read for everyone. This next month, so this ends the Trauma Resilience Month. And so starting next month is Navigating Modern Politics. Yay. So maybe we can incorporate some of these skills into navigating modern politics. Our first is going to be our live broadcast, our live podcast that we do. Then we will do a Lumina talk about it. And then at the end of an online Lumina talk about it only. So we're taking that Sunday and just doing online only. And the last Sunday of the month, State Senator Courtney Neron will be with us talking about navigating modern politics. So we have a real live person coming to us that is going to talk about a real life subject that she deals with on a daily basis. All right, so if you want to stay after, you can. We're going to just save the Q&A for afterwards because we have some children that are amongst us that need to get focused or refocused in their direction home. Thanks again for joining us, and thanks for being here and participating and being active participants. Once again, let's thank our guests for being here. And what we've been practicing is giving financial contribution to the nonprofit of their choice. And so we are going to do that with Keelan and Bethany, that we are going to give. At the end of the year, we give towards nonprofit organizations. And so they're going to choose a nonprofit to give to, and because of their work with us today. And hopefully, maybe I'm thinking February, that maybe we can do something in February to give a couple of months off and do a part 2. Because we have the holidays, we have Thanksgiving brunch coming up in November, we have brunch with Santa in December. So we have a lot of things going on. So maybe in February, we can do something with trauma resilience. All right, thanks everybody for coming, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Be blessed.